Now let us talk about the Oversoul. Anything you do here benefits your Overself, and so benefits you because you are the same thing. The correct translation of Om Mani Padme Hum actually is held to mankind's Overself, the part of you that you should be praying to, via your subconscious. Sadly, it was mistranslated as hell, the jewel in the lotus, as most people believe. Now, concerning the subconscious, it is well to note that the subconscious receives images, not words merely, but images more so than anything. An image held with a strong emotion will sink to the subconscious mind quicker than any other thing. All religions talk about one God, and yet people assume it's making reference to a supreme being. While this assumption is not far off the mark, it's not quite the supreme being most people think. Your spiritual body is merely an extension of your real self. That real self is called the Overself. The Overself sends out a pseudopod which inhabits the physical body so it can experience and learn that which cannot be learnt within the spiritual planes. Knowing about the existence of your Overself is hugely important, as you are currently 1/10 conscious while your Overself is fully 10 of tenths conscious. Before we go any further, we should try and establish a platform of understanding, a point of reference, so we don't confuse you. Most people would like to think that they know what God is, and yet the closest thing to you that we could term a God is your own Overself. Sadly, many have little or no idea what it is or that it even exists. Now, I'ma just add, in the Quran it say that self will accuse self on the day of judgment. Yourself, this talking about your Overself. Let's continue. Your physical body is not the real you, as it's just a shell to enable part of the real you to be on this planet. There is a God, a good God, a fair God, but of course God is not the same as a human. It is useless to attempt to comprehend what God is when most people cannot even comprehend their own Overself. Just as you cannot comprehend your Overself, nor can you comprehend the Overself of your Overself. But we are going into realms quite beyond human comprehension, while it's existing within the third dimension and its limitations. Your Overself resides in the 10th dimension, while as you live here in the third. You are a multidimensional being. However, most people don't understand what a dimension is. We should digress and elaborate on dimensions before continuing with the Overself. We currently live in the third dimension, but let's start at the first and explain up to the third dimension. It's pointless talking about dimensions between the fourth and the 10th because there is no point of reference. You can only start to comprehend beyond the third dimension once you can consciously astral travel into the fourth dimension. First dimension, let's talk about it. It's like a train on a single track running between 2 points. It can only go forward and backwards, so we have length only. The second dimension is like a car. It can also go forward and backwards, move from side to side. So we now have length and breadth. The third dimension is like a plane. It can also go forward and backwards, move from side to side, but it can also move up and down. So now we have length, breadth, and height. In the fourth dimension, time can be variable. Hence, how trained people can see into the future based on the record of probabilities within the Akashic records. Time exists within all dimensions, but not beyond the 10th. In the fifth dimension, space can be variable, as in we can have an object within a room that's smaller than the object itself. Something that can be very hard to comprehend due to the limitations of the third dimension we live in. Time. is just a convention established by mankind to suit his convenience, mainly today for commerce. Time on earth cannot be found anywhere in any other dimension. Therefore, it's not real time. Real time is space time, something science knows very little about. Time on earth is relative to each creature, so it's certainly not a fixed perception as many believe. Some interesting facts regarding dimensions. A second dimensional object will cast a first dimensional shadow. A third dimensional object will cast a second dimensional shadow. A fourth dimensional object will cast a third dimensional shadow. A fifth dimensional object will cast a fourth dimensional shadow. This is why some UFOs are seen and not registered on radars, as you are seeing the third dimensional shadow of a fourth dimensional object that current technology cannot monitor. Another interesting fact, when you reach the ninth dimension, you will exist face to face with your Overself, God. Only within the night do we get to fully understand the cosmos. Now back to establishing a platform of understanding. We can liken the Overself to a brain. In this case, your Overself is a very powerful brain. Far too powerful to actually come down to such a lower plane of existence, and therefore it just send down an extension of itself, which is you. However, let us use your brain for this explanation. The Overself managing its many puppets. Your brain by itself cannot do very much. The brain cannot see, hear, feel, touch, smell, etc. So for our brain to understand and experience its surroundings, it needs a variety of extensions attached to the physical body. Those extensions you know as eyes, ears, nose, skin, tongue, arms, legs, fingers, etc. Until each and every part of your body serves a purpose for the brain to perceive and understand its surroundings. Such it is with your Overself. You are just an extension of your Overself, as your fingers are to your physical body. You and your Overself are the same thing, and by injuring your Overself, you injure, and by injuring yourself, you injure your Overself. Let's assume your brain has a string of ambitions. It wants to know what things are like on earth. What is poverty? What is wealth? What is famine? What is plethora? Plethora. What is adversity? What are privileges? White folks. To enable your Overself to fully experience and understand all these extremities and many other extremities, it sends down an extension of itself into a physical body so it can learn. All the various parts of your physical body allow the Overself to gain experiences and knowledge while it's here on earth. Aristotle is credited with the traditional classification of the five sense organs: sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. Through the various extensions connected to the brain, is the brain able to perceive and experience its surroundings. Humans also have awareness of balance, pressure, temperature, pain, emotions, and motion, all of which may involve the coordinated use of multiple sensory organs. Likewise, so can your Overself via you. Dr. Ramper talks about the Overself throughout many of his books. Your Overself hears, sees, and experiences everything you do while it's on this earth. So there is absolutely nothing you can do which remains unknown to your Overself. This is why the Quran says self shall accuse self. Self will judge self. You see, your whole existence is stored within your subconscious. Your subconscious resides within you in the Overself, the soul that is. There, Dr. Ramper explains in detail how to communicate with your Overself. via your subconscious. Your subconscious is like a good librarian. The librarians do not need to know much themselves, as their real value is in knowing where to find certain information on request and without delay. Therefore, librarians can be consulted about a problem and they can tell you where the book is on the library shelves. They can also tell you what other types of books will give you further instructions on that you seek. The subconscious is much like the librarian. The subconscious is a pretty damn sort of individual, but it knows exactly what to get the information you want. So if you get in touch with your subconscious, you will find you get results far more quickly than if you waste energy trying to contact your overself directly. Spirit guide are two words that have been misused over time to express one of two things. The word spirit guide has been used correctly to make reference to our overself. Sadly, they have been used to make reference to a spiritual being which watches over that individual. And yet, this later view is erroneous. People want to know about their guide, their master, their keeper, their guardian angel, or whatever you want to call it. Many people believe they have a spirit guide because they feel insecure. Perhaps because they feel lonely or they are sure they cannot manage without help. Going off on a tangent for a brief moment, there are real spirit guides, but they look after the planet as a whole and are not here for humans. Very young children can see them, yet some lose the ability because of the disbelief of adults. There are other kinds of entities that people mistake for spirit guides, yet they are nothing less than mischievous entities passing themselves off as spirit guides to the untrained person. Now I'm gonna say this. According to Dr. Monroe, he said that your spirit guide is you. It's aspects of your oversoul or your overself that is on other dimensions. But let us keep it pushing. A person writes and says, "Oh, I have a red Indian as my God. I know he is a red Indian because he is so wise." Now let us get this straight once and for all. People do not have red Indians, black Indians, white Indians, or Tibetans, dead or alive, as spirit guides. Actually, there would not be enough Tibetans or Indians to go around. It's like anyone saying, "Oh, well, I was Cleopatra in my past life," as there is no words of truth in it. Actually, the alleged spirit guide is just one's overself, who really is one's guide. It's astounding that the Red Indian and Tibetan have been either mistreated or totally ignored by the whole world as third-class citizens while as they are alive, and as soon as they are dead, idiots think they have one as a spirit guide. What makes you think that just because they are dead that they have become spiritual teachers? Why should they bother with those who abandoned them well before they were dead? Anyone who thinks that they have a Red Indian or Tibetan Lama as a guide, or believes that they are the reincarnation of someone famous, is very deluded and should be locked up for everyone's safety. Read Feeding the Flame and the 13th Candle by Lob St. Tues the Ramper for more information. Now I'm going to play this little clip by Mr. Ramper himself while he's in the body of the Englishman, of him talking about the proper way to pray. Or better yet, get in contact with your overself.
This is a talk about the power of prayer. All religions believe in the power of prayer, but few people understand the mechanics of the process. Few people understand why prayers work for some and seemingly never for another. Most Westerners believe that people of the East either pray to a graven image or do not pray at all. Both statements are untrue. And I am going to tell you now how you can remove prayer from the realms of mysticism and superstition and use it to help others. For prayer is a very real thing indeed. It is one of the greatest forces of this world when used as it was intended to be used. Most religions have a belief that each person has a guardian angel or someone who looks after that person. That also is true. But the guardian angel is oneself, the other self. The other self which is at the other side of life. Very, very few people can see this angel, this guardian of theirs, while they are on the earth. But those who can are able to describe it in detail. This guardian, we must call it something, so let us call it guardian, has not a material body such as we have on earth. It appears to be ghostly. Sometimes a clairvoyant will see it as a blue, scintillating figure larger than life size and connected to the flesh body by what is known as a silver cord. That cord which pulses and glistens with life as it conveys messages from one to the other. This guardian has not a body such as that of earth, but it is still able to do the things that the earth body can do, with the addition that it can do very many more things which the earth body cannot. For example, the guardian can go to any part of the world in a flash. It is the guardian which does astral traveling and relays back to the body through the silver cord that which is needed. When you pray to yourself, to your other self, to your guardian. And if we knew properly how to pray, we should send those prayers through the silver cord, because the connection we use now is like a telephone line, which is a very faulty line indeed. And we have to repeat ourselves in order to make sure that the message gets through as we intended. So, when you pray, speak as you would speak through a very long-distance telephone line. Speak with absolute clarity and actually think of what you are saying. The fault, I should add, lies with us here on this world, lies with the imperfect body we have on this world, the fault is not in our guardian. Pray in simple language, making sure that the requests are always positive and never negative. Having carefully framed our prayer to be absolutely positive and to be absolutely clear of any possibility of misunderstanding, repeat that prayer perhaps 3 times. Let us have an example. Suppose, for instance, that you have a person who is ill and suffering, and you want to do something about it. You should pray for the relief of that person's suffering. You should pray 3 times, saying exactly the same thing each time. You should visualize that shadowy figure, that insubstantial figure, actually going to the house of the other person, following the route which you would yourself follow, entering the house and laying hands on that person, and so effecting a cure. I will return to this particular theme in a moment, but first let me say that you should repeat that as many times as are necessary. And if you really believe, then there will be an improvement. This matter of a complete cure, well, if a person has a leg amputated, no amount of prayer will replace it. But if a person has cancer or any other grave disease, then that can be halted. Obviously, the less the seriousness of the complaint, the easier it is to effect a cure. Everyone knows of the records of miracle cures throughout the history of the world. Lourdes and many other places, they are famed for their cures. And these cures are effected by the Overself, by the guardian of the person concerned, in association with the fame of the locality. For constant thought about a locality builds up a very potent force. Lourdes is known throughout the world as a place of miracle cures, so people go there utterly confident that they will be cured. And very often, that confidence is passed on to the guardian of the person, and so a cure is effected very, very easily. Some people like to think that there is a saint or an angel or some ancient relic of a saint that does the cure, but in reality, each person cures himself. And if a healer gets in touch with a person with the intention of curing that sick person, then a cure is only effected through the guardian of that sick person. It all comes down, as I told you before, to yourself, the real self which you are when you leave this, the shadow life, and enter the greater reality. While upon this earth, we all tend to think that this is the only thing that matters. But earth, this world, no. This is a world of illusion, the world of hardship, where we come to learn lessons not so easily learned in the kinder, more generous world to which we return. You may yourself have some disability. You may be ill, or you may lack the desired esoteric power that can be cured. It can be overcome if you believe it can, and if you really want it. Suppose you have a great desire, a burning desire to help others. You want to be a healer. Then you, in the seclusion of your private room, perhaps in your bedroom, should pray. You should rest in the most relaxed position that you can find, preferably with your feet together and with your fingers interlinked, not in the usual attitude of prayer, but with your fingers interlinked. In that way, you preserve and amplify the magnetic circuit of the body, and the aura becomes stronger, and the silver cord is able to convey messages more accurately. Then, having got yourself in the right position and in the right frame of mind, you should pray. You could pray, for example, give me healing power that I may heal others. Give me healing power that I may heal others. Give me healing power that I may heal others. Then have a few moments while you remain in your relaxed position and picture yourself encompassed in the shadowy outline of your own body. As I told you before, you must visualize the route you would take to the sick person's house, and then make that body travel in your imagination to the home of the person you desire to heal. Picture yourself, your Overself, arriving at that house, arriving in the presence of a person you desire to help. Picture yourself putting out your arm, your hand, and touching that person. Imagine a flow of life-giving energy going along your arm, through your fingers, into that other person like a vivid blue light. Imagine that the person is gradually becoming cured. With faith, with a little practice, it can be done. It is done daily. In the Far East, it is commonplace. It is useful to place one's hand in imagination on the back of the person's neck, and the other hand on or over the afflicted part. You will have to pray to yourself in groups of 3 prayers, a number of times each day, until you get the desired result. Again, if you believe, you will get that result. But let me issue a grave, grave warning. You cannot increase your own fortune in this way. There is a very ancient occult law which stops one from profiting from prayers for self-gain. You cannot do it yourself unless it is to help others. And unless you sincerely believe that it will help others. I know of an actual case wherein a man who had a moderate income and was fairly comfortably off thought that if he won the Irish sweepstake, he would help others. He would be a great benefactor of mankind, knowing a little, but not enough, of esoteric matters. He made great plans of what he would do. He set out with a carefully prepared program of prayers. He prayed along the lines set out in this record for 2 months. He prayed that he would pick the winner of the Irish sweepstake. For 2 months he prayed in groups of 3 prayers, 3 times a day, 9 prayers in all during each day. And as he fully anticipated, he won the Irish sweepstake. And he won one of the biggest prizes of them all. Eventually, he had the money, and it went to his head. He forgot all about his good intentions, all about his promises. He forgot all about everything except that he had this vast sum of money, and he could now do exactly as he wanted to do. He devoted the money to his own self-gratification. For a very few months he had a wonderful time, during which he became harder and harder. And then the inexorable law came into force. And instead of keeping that money and helping others, he lost everything that he had gained and everything that he had before. In the end, he died and was buried in a pauper's grave. I say to you that if you use the power of prayer properly, without thought of self-gain, without thought of self-aggrandizement, then you have tapped the greatest power on earth, a force so great that if just a few genuine people got together and prayed for peace, then there would be peace, and wars and thoughts of wars would be no more.